Good morning. Is everyone back? Oh, you got it. Okay. Okay. All right. Good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started with the ITA portion of this training. I'm Alicia Watson. And if you have any questions, if you'll hold them to the end, I'm sure you might have some. If not, the PowerPoint will be available. The video will be available. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's not too bad, but I know it's a little bit more information that you're not familiar with. All right. So first we have the ITA enrollment steps. First, the individuals must be WIOA eligible as an adult, dislocated worker, or youth. Um, Two, they select a program based of interest off of ETPL, and ETPL is the eligible trainer providers list. And that information will go on their IEP/ISS. Again, those, coincide with each other. Next, you want to make sure the participant meets the ITA requirements for the selected program. Make sure that all documents are uploaded into Alabama Works for the selected program. Now, for you don't complete this, but the training justification must be completed for adults and dislocated workers. Next, the ITA activity code must be entered in Alabama Works. And then last, the ITA request is emailed to ita@workforce.alabama.gov. All right, going in depth with these steps. First, the participant must be WIOA eligible as an adult, dislocated worker, or youth. Every participant that is WIOA eligible may not be WIOA suitable. And that is a big thing when getting to know this individual, some of the conversations that they have. A lot of times they may come in, you know, full steam, 100%, wanting to enter into a program. And the more that they are case managed, the more you kind of find out that what they are wanting does not align with the goals of WIOA as far as ITA funding. So again, that's why the suitability is just as important as eligibility. All WIOA eligibility and enrollment documentations must be uploaded before the ITA and/or amendment can be submitted. Once that information is submitted, we go through the documents, the case notes, the services, and we go through and it's kind of like a mini monitoring that we do to make sure everything is correct, completed, documents are valid before the ITA funding is approved. The case manager must sign the CIF and, if needed, the self-attestation form. The old name used to be the applicant statement, but it is the same document. Case notes should be current regarding participants' eligibility, suitability, goals, and career plans. Individuals are limited to one ITA for occupational skills training, and training should result in a job-ready status at completion. WIOA and ITA eligibility must be completed prior to training. The ITA request must be approved by the workforce development staff before the first day of class, the semester for which the ITA funds are requested. So in this process, and it is a little bit down in the PowerPoint, but I do strongly want to mention that any ITA requests must be sent in at least 2 weeks before the start date of the training program. We have ITA requests that come in across the 6 areas that we govern. So we want to make sure there's enough time for that participants' documents, case notes, and everything to be reviewed and that is completed. So we ask that it's in at least 2 weeks before the first day of the start of training. All right, so this here is for adults and dislocated workers, and this here are the required docs that are needed in order to be submitted for ITA consideration. For adults and dislocated workers, again, this does not pertain to you, but at enrollment, they must be paired with the business service rep, and those are in the career centers. Because we want to make sure that participant is receiving all services. And if they have not found employment within 30 days after training completion, they are to be enrolled into an OJT, which is on the job training for adults and dislocated workers. Also, for the adults and dislocated workers, if they take the TABE and they need to remediate, they have to complete 20 hours of remediation. Again, this is for adults and dislocated workers. All right, for youth, require ITA eligibility documents. And again, this information here is everything that you would have collected at the beginning of their enrollment. So if you're using the customer information form or the WIA application, their driver's license identification information, social security card, tape results, their consent forms, which are the customer agreement forms, information release forms, and the grievance and complaint forms, also with their ISS. And if you're using My Next Move, that should already be uploaded, and also with their eligibility documentation. So whatever documentations that's used to determine them WIA eligible, again, all of this information will be entered into Alabama Works before the ITA request form is emailed. All right, so here we have some items that are not covered by an ITA. So individuals who may have degrees higher than a bachelor's degree, such as a master's or a doctoral degree, will not be considered for an ITA. Remedial prerequisite academic general studies or repeat courses are not covered. Students should use their Pell Grant scholarships or student loans to pay for these. And then individuals who are going into truck driver training, their drug screening must be 100% negative in order to be considered for an ITA. We've come across instances where they have had one of the tested drugs that have come back positive. In that case, they have to retest and receive a negative result for all that is tested for. All right, select a program on the ETPL based on the information on the IEP/ISS. Here is a screenshot of where you can find the link to go to the ETPL. If you're on the Alabama Works homepage, you scroll down to the bottom, and in the third box where it says provider/education services, you select ETPL approved programs. You can click the filter criteria. So if they are wanting a specific training program, you can select the filter. And then it'll bring up this box here. And then in the program, you can type in the type of program that the participant is interested in. And then here it will bring up all programs. Also on ETPL, when you pull up, the first page, if you don't do the filter, there will be 100 pages. If you go down to the bottom and you select it, you can change it to where it's only 50 pages, and that's where it's giving you the most providers on each page. It is alphabetized. You by the program, you can alphabetize it by the provider, or the program, whichever makes it easier for you to maneuver through ETPL. Again, there are a lot of programs statewide that is on here. So if the participant knows exactly the training program that they're interested in, you can pull that up. On ETPL, it will have the cost of the program. It will have the requirements, that is listed in the program, the type of credential that the participant will receive in the program. So it has a lot of information on there. We also advise participants to contact that provider, because they're the ones that are going to training. So they have to get a feel of if they will be comfortable in that with that training provider. We don't want to do everything for the provider, submit for funding, and then the first day they go and say, oh, well, I don't like this provider. That information, that due diligence should have been done before the ITA request was submitted. So we always stress that the participants contact the providers and talk to them to get an understanding of the program and how it will work. All right, here. So this here is for areas 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. These are the cost categories of the breakdown of funding that can be requested for training programs. As you will see, area 3 is not on here. That'll be the next slide. But for a category, which are short-term programs, 26 weeks or less, funding requests can be up to $4,500. For category 2, 26 weeks to 52 weeks is up to 7,500. Categories 3 is up to 10,000, and that's for programs 56 weeks or less. And those programs are your highly skilled credential programs, which most likely lead to a degree. So when the participants are, showing their interest in programs, you have to see how long that program is. And what credential it receives. Now, the category 4, this here has to be approved very, very rarely. Do we get programs above that amount? But again, before it can be submitted, it has to be approved. This here's the information for area 3. So the only difference is for their category 3, the cost can go up to $12,000. That amount may change once the program year ends and the board votes again. Right now, it is different from the other 5 areas, but this here is just for the category 3, 52 weeks to 104 weeks training programs. All right, the participant must demonstrate a need for training based on the participant's assessments as documented on their ISS. The training must also align with local in-demand occupations, with both the case manager and the participant reviewing the number of available job openings in that area. If you don't use ONET, you can use ONET to find this information based on the training program that they're interested in. It can give you the mean and the median wage, the amount of job openings in the area. You can type it in by the state. It'll show you different states. It'll show you different counties. So ONET is a real good tool with helping with that labor market information for that training program. All right, you want to make sure again that the participant meets the ITA requirements for the selected program. Here is a desk aid that you can use. It's just a quick reference desk aid. It gives you the tape level that they need for the training program, kind of the financial aid information, post-training expectations, eligibility, and requirements. Again, this is a good desk aid for you to use, and this is also on Staff Online Resources. All right, so here is a breakdown of the minimum tape locator levels for training. Again, as being youth providers, the youth that enroll in your program must take the full tape. If you're using tape scores or if they have an assessment from another educational partner that has the scale scores that can be used, but the equivalents must equal to these. So if it's a short-term program that's 6 months or less, they must score on a D level. For truck driving programs, the requirement is an M level. For a short-term program, 6 months to a year is A level, and those are some technical programs like welding, office administration. For your highly technical programs, 1 year longer, electronics, HVAC, computer science, and A level. For the short-term medical programs that are less than a year, so these are like CNA, CMA, pharmacy, surgical tech, some dental assistant programs, those must be on a D level or higher. And for your 1 year or longer higher technical programs, LPNs, RNs, occupational physical therapists, clinical lab radiology, those must score on an A level for the TABE. All right. So college coursework, transcripts, and work key scores will not be accepted in lieu of the TABE. Case managers and youth providers should refer clients to tabetest.com for TABE study material and practice tests prior to testing. All right. For Pell Grant information, participants are required to apply for a Pell Grant for each year of training. Again, WIOA is not an entitlement programs, and ITAs, if it's a semester-based program, ITAs are approved one semester at a time. So for our long-term programs, the cost of the first 2 semesters, which include prereqs, are the responsibility of the student. ITA funds can possibly pay for up to the last 3 or 4 semesters, but that in paying for that, it cannot exceed the local area allowable cost. The participants must remain WIOA eligible and suitable while enrolled. ITA funds will cover tuition and fees, while Pell Grants and other funding will cover books and their supplies. If the training or participant is not eligible for Pell Grant, the ITA may cover the cost of tuition, fees, books, and supplies. And ITAs again are issued once for each participant. So a participant can only receive ITA funding once. So if they come and they receive training, say they want to do CNA, and then they come back and say, oh, well, now I want to go into nursing, we can only fund it one time. So we want to make sure that they have that knowledge, that make sure you are picking the program that best suits you, because if you try for this funding, you can only be funded one time. And for some short-term programs, like I said, the truck driving, CNA, CMA, pharmacy tech, those are not Pell eligible programs. So if they are on the ETPL, ITA funding will cover the cost of that program. All right, so upload all enrollment docs for selected programs. For long-term programs, if they are a semester-based program, we have to have the cost breakdown per semester from the provider. And on that cost breakdown, it'll have the tuition, books and everything for that semester. And then it'll have what funds are being requested from WIOA. It'll also have if they're receiving Pell or not on that cost breakdown as well. We have to have their transcript along with the previous semester grades. If the program gives an acceptance letter, so if they're going into the nursing field, whether LPN or RN, they'll receive an acceptance letter prior to their start from the school. Their Pell information, if it's awarded or denied, we have to have that documentation, and also the ITA pre-registration rules and responsibilities. All right, for participants that are interested in getting their CDL, we must have their MVR, their motor vehicle report, the drug screenings no more than 2 weeks old, and it must be 100% negative, their DOT physical certificate, their CDL permit, and again, the ITA registration rules and responsibilities. All right, and this form here is a snapshot of what the ITA rules and responsibilities look like. This is on Staff Online Resources, and this is just where you're going through the type of program they're in and, letting them know what is required. Again, they must apply for Pell if it's a semester-based program. It tells you what ITA funds will cover. If it's a semester-based program and they drop out of failed class, how it will go. They must stay in contact with you at least once a month while they're in training. Again, they must remain WIOA eligible and suitable while enrolled in an ITA. All right. This here is for adults and dislocated workers. At the beginning on the first slide, I mentioned about the training justification. Again, this is only for adults and dislocated workers, but they do have to enter in a training justification. All right, this is another slide for that. All right, and the ITA guidelines for entering ITAs, and it is the same for adults and youth. This is also any forms that you see in any of our slides is listed on Staff Online Resources to give you step by step with entering in the services. Also in your red book, it gives you step by step. Entering in an ITA service is the same as entering in any other service that you'll provide to the participant, whether it's financial literacy, um, whether it's mentoring, whatever the case, all services are entered in the same way. All right, so for entering in services in Alabama Works, again, same way, you enter in the area, your office location. The only difference is here, you do have to select the partner, which is the WIOA Title I Workforce Development, and then you select your activity code. So for youth, the training activity code is 416, the occupational skills training approved provider. And you'll see where the arrow points to. Once you select activity code, you'll be able to select that 416 training code. All right, when entering in that code, you enter in the projected beginning date. And I want to highly stress when entering in the actual begin date, this date is only entered in when you have confirmation that the participant has started training, not before. So just say, for instance, if you have someone that started training on March 9th, that was the projected begin date. That actual begin date should not be March 9th. That actual begin date should be whatever date that training program has started. A lot of short-term programs, the first day of training, that provider will send an invoice to accounting to invoice. So if you're saying, oh, that actual start date was March 9th, but the training actually doesn't start until April, they've invoiced for a participant at a training program that hasn't started yet. So please make sure that that actual begin date is the actual day that you have confirmed from the provider that that participant started class. And then again, you enter your projected end date again. All right, the next page, you select the training provider, the course, and the occupation code. And again, this occupation code will come from ONET. ONET is tied within the Alabama Work System. So once you get the type of training that they're interested in, you select the training occupation code, type in what it is. So here, if you type in CDL, the first one that'll pull up will be the heavy and tractor trailer, and you select that occupational training code. All right, once you've entered the service in the system, you will email the ITA request form to ita@workforce.alabama.gov. The ITA request form is located on Staff Online Resources. Once you email the form, when you fill it out, you will have the participant's name, their state ID, the amount of funding that is being requested, and if they receive Pell or not, and the type of cost category that the program is. Once you send it, someone that processes ITAs will send you back a received response. That is notifying you that we've received that request, and now we're doing the back end work of verifying documents and everything before it is processed. Again, on here, ITAs must be sent to the ITA unit no later than 2 weeks before the training start date. Same day or next day ITA requests will not be approved. We've run into this a lot. Sometimes we may be low on staff, or staff may be out of office or training, whatever the case may be. So we want to make sure everyone is allotted an amount of time in order to review and process these ITAs. If you have an extenuating circumstance, send us an email to the ITA asking, hey, this is what's going on. I know it might be outside of the 2 weeks. Just let us know, and then we'll say, okay, hey, go ahead and send it. If it's not an extenuating circumstance and it's 2 days before, the ITA request will not be approved. So just make sure only in extenuating circumstances are you to email us to make sure that it is okay to still send that ITA request. And then ITAs will not be reviewed for approval if all required documentation is not entered and uploaded into Alabama Works. Again, that's documents, that's case notes, that's services. If it's not in the system, we will not be approving it. All right. Once the ITA is processed, this is the form that it generates. This is the ITA contract. Once the system generates this, we will send it back to the case manager, and we'll have an email saying approved and uploaded into Alabama Works. This is the document that you will send to the provider and they'll know funding is approved. If this is not received, that participant has not been approved as of yet. Sometimes there may be something that we looked at in the documents or case notes, and we might have more questions, so we will communicate with you through email in regards to get the matter rectified in order to continue processing the ITA request. Again, once you get that ITA contract, you send it to the provider and you let the participant know that they have gotten their ITA funding approved. The ITA cannot be approved until all eligibility and enrollment documentation is entered into Alabama Works. The ITA must be approved before the participant starts training. If that participant starts training before they get that approval, funding will be forfeited and the cost will be on the participant. So please stress to them, until I call you to say, hey, they approved your funding, do not start. Again, that funding will be on the participant. If for any reason it is coming close to the deadline and you haven't gotten approved email back from the ITA unit, send an email, say, hey, I'm checking on the status of, so-and-so's ITA request. Sometimes during certain times of the year, we have a lot of ITA requests coming in. So maybe it got processed, but that email didn't get sent out. We don't mind you contacting us just to see. All right. For students that are interested in nursing, ITAs no longer cover LPN to RN mobility training programs or any other transition programs. The participant must either choose between going into LPN training or RN training. If you have a participant that is in an RN program and they want to drop down to an LPN due to failing a class, please email the ITA email first before, so that everything can be verified. It can go up to management to make sure that it is okay to proceed with funding for that transition. Because with that, you have to look at the amount of funding that has been used and things like that. So it's not always an easy transition. There's a lot of other things that have to be taken into account before. And if you do send that amendment, and in that email have the participant's name, state ID number, their grades, current transcript. And then once a determination is made, whoever is processing that ITA will email you back with a decision. All right, here we have amendments. Amendments must be submitted for participants at the end of the semester, and their grades and cost breakdown must also be uploaded into Alabama Works before additional ITA funds can be requested. So the amendment is used for if you have somebody that's in a long-term program, which is 3 to 4 semesters, and you're requesting funding for additional funds for the next semester, or if the training program said they were starting on one day and they said, no, well, we're going to push it back, another month, a month and a half. This information is going to be, this form is going to be filled out to send to the ITA request, to the ITA email, so that it can be updated in the system. And if that amendment will be approved, changes, projected start date or end date within the current year require an amendment and approval. These changes can be completed by the case manager and noted in case notes before submitting the amendment to the ITA email. Amendments that affect the budget, allocation, provider choice, or curriculum change are required to be submitted to Workforce Development for approval. So make sure you send it in. On the form, you put and it says Career Center, but you just put your name as the youth provider, your area, the name of the participant, state ID, where they're going to training, the curriculum that they're going to, beginning end date, the amount of weeks, the cost category, and the up to amount. Once the ITA department, RTA unit receives an amendment, we will upload the approved amendment in the participants' files if it is approved, and you'll get back approved amendment and upload it into Alabama Works. The first up to box amount should be a cumulative total. So that is the beginning ITA amount plus any additional requested funds. Again, if they're in a semester-based program, each time that amendment is sent in, that up to amount will change because again, it will be the beginning requested amount plus the additional amount that is being requested for the next time. And that is the amount that goes into the up to box. Again, no amount can go over the area's allowable cost category approved amount. And then the comment box is the section that is used to tell exactly what you are adding or extending. So if the end date is changing for the program, the beginning date, or if it's a semester and you're adding funds for tuition and fees, you just make sure you put a comment in so that when it's being processed, we can know in addition to the documents that have been submitted. All right, next we have the failure to report form. Once you send in a failure to report, step one is you enter the closure information in Alabama Works. So failure to report is used for if a participant dropped out of the training before they started. So on the first day, first 3 days, and the provider notifies you to say, hey, this participant did not come to training. They did not start. You'll complete the failure to report. Again, your area, your program's name, the participant's name, state ID, their training provider, the date of the closure, and the contact information. When you're putting in putting in the information for the fail to report, you're entering the closure information. The dropped out completion code should be entered in the closing tab of the 300 activity service code in Alabama Works. And you do not use dropped out completion code for any other reason other than a failure to report. There's another form that is used for all other cases. Again, and then you email a copy of the failure to report to the ITA email and to the training provider. You will also email a copy of the failure to report to tamara.holcomb@workforce.alabama.gov. So make sure that the email goes to those three people, ITA, training provider, and Tamara, for fail to report. All right, if the class is canceled, a failure to report is not required if the training provider has a new start date for the class. If that's the case, then you'll just submit an amendment for that. If the new start date is in the next program year, meaning after July 1, an amendment will be required. If the training is not rescheduled or the participants decides not to attend training, please send a rescind ITA email with the state ID to the ITA email. So if funding has been approved and the participant changes their mind, or the provider says, hey, well, we're going to push it back 30 days, and then 30 days come and they say, well, we're not going to have it because the enrollment is low, that approved contract that you received, print it out, write rescind on it, email it back to the ITA email, and it'll get processed on the ITA side and then on the accounting side. So that way those funds will be taken away out of that activity code for that participant. Also, if that happens, you have a participant that decides to not attend training after they've already been approved. And if they come back, their suitability will be highly played into determining if they should even receive another ITA again. Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances to where they just couldn't. But if they come back trying to get an ITA again, you have to take that into account. All right, next we have terminations. And again, all of these forms, the FTR, the ITA request form, terminations, the amendments, all of these are located in staff online resources. So termination, complete a termination based on verified information from the training provider and document the information source. This form should be submitted within 2 weeks from the date the participant completes training or discontinues training. Again, you enter the closure information in Alabama Works, you upload the documents, and again, this is emailed to the training provider, the ITA email, and the Tamara Holcomb. And then we will process it and disregard that commerce little error. And we'll process that termination, and Tamara will finish processing on her end. And again, on this termination form, a lot of the information is the same, especially to the failure to report form. It'll be your program's name, the participant's name, state ID, training provider, the date of termination, the credentials, degree / license certificate. And here it has if they were successful or unsuccessful. So you select the box and then you put a comment in. If like this one says graduated with CNA. So you just put in a small little comment for it. All right. All right, so employment verification. Employment verification is required for participants not appearing in the UI wage records. This is something Kevin touched on yesterday. And then the acceptable verification includes employer forms, pay stubs, case manager documentation, or the employment follow-up survey available in staff online resources. All right, so now we are here for supportive services, and this is a little different from your youth provider supportive services. This is for participants that have gone into ITAs. So after graduation, expenses such as certification or licensing fees will no longer be paid by ITA funds. Supportive services will provide reimbursement to the participant with testing payment receipt provided. You email supportive services at workforce.alabama.gov with the participant's name, state ID, and a copy of their receipt. The receipt must show the date the participant made the payment. That service code, which will be 416 for youth, must be successful completion, and the certification or final transcript must be uploaded. For individuals that are going into the CDL program, a copy of their CDL license must be uploaded. And this is a big thing. Supportive services will not provide funding reimbursement if the participant has taken the DOT physical, drug screening, motor vehicle report, and or the CDL permit before eligibility has been completed. So with that, you have participants say, I want to do truck driving. Well, I've already done my physical, my drug screening. I already have my permit. Fine. Again, the drug screening has to be within 2 weeks. So, we tell participants, let's determine eligibility first. Once eligibility has been determined, then go do that. Because for one, you want to make sure you're eligible for the program and that they haven't wasted their money going to get this done and WIA funding can't pay for it. Two, if they get it after they've been determined eligible, once they completed training and gotten their CDL permit and license, supportive services can be requested and they can be reimbursed for the funds that they use to get the permit, the motor vehicle report, and the drug screening. So stress to them, hey, let's determine eligibility first before you go and get these things done. And then last, the participant has 90 days from the completion of service to apply for supportive services reimbursement. All right. So that is the end. I know it was a lot, especially with you all not doing ITAs. That's the basic core of the information. If you have questions, you can email the ITA email, ita@workforce.alabama.gov. This PowerPoint will be in Staff Online Resources. All the forms that we went through in this PowerPoint will be on Staff Online Resources as well. I know you all will have questions by the time you get to enrolling someone in an ITA. So please just reach out to us with any questions and we'll be able to, guide you through either enrolling or if you have an eligibility, suitability question, whatever questions you have, just, reach out to us to let us know. Before I end my part, did you all have any questions before we take another quick break and go to the last part, which is work-based learning?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I have two
Okay.
questions. The first
Mhm.
is what is the time frame to I guess say to report a failure to report when someone fails to report to a training? Is there, I assume
So
immediately, but
yeah, immediately as soon as possible. We say less than a week, so maybe like that first week of training, because again, you do want to verify with the provider and the participant. We have had instances where a provider has said, yeah, they came, and the participant said, no, I didn't. So within that first week, sometimes a participant may not go that first day, but they might show up the next day. So we also stress that you kind of have a kind of good communication relationship with providers, and have that base contact to say, hey, well, let me email so and so to see if they started. So we say immediately if at all possible, but no later than the first week.
okay. And the last question is about the supportive services reimbursement. Is there anything in place that addresses if a participant does not have the funds to pay up front and wait for reimbursement?
We can't use services we use for that. So it yeah, so if that's the case, so if you have a participant that doesn't, you can use, if you have if it's available in your budget, you can use supportive services under the youth program to assist with that.
Okay.
Now, if you as a youth provider assist with them getting that, the reimbursement can't be, the supportive services from the ITA part can't be requested. Only if the participant physically paid for it, because if that's the case, then we're paying you all as a youth provider back, not the participant. So if you provide that initial supportive services with helping them get the motor vehicle report, the physical and the drug screening, they can't request supportive services for reimbursement
Okay.
on the back end.
Okay. All right. Those are the only two we had.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Well, like I said, if you have any other questions, like I said, just email us, ask us. That's why we're here. We want to make sure we are available as much as, and for guidance as much as we can. And so right now we are going to take another 10-minute break. We'll be back at 11:10 to finish up the last part of the training, which it will be work-based learning.
Thank you.
Mhm.